Good morning, everyone. We're continuing here in the KITZUR HILCHOS Shabbos. We're holding over here by the laws of Lechem Mishnah, the Challahs, the two Challahs that we make HaMotzei on. The next halach is KITZUR HaChalahs, the covering of the Challahs. Machasim HaChalahs v'shas HaMotzei milamala. At the time that you make HaMotzei, the Challah should be covered from the top. V'chei milamata, and so too from the bottom, as we shall see. And this is to remind us of the man, the heavenly bread that fell from Shemayim, from the skies, a double portion before Shabbos. It was munach b'kufza, it was like wrapped up in two coverings, one on the top and one on the bottom. And therefore the same thing is by us. We have a top cover and a bottom cover. Now it turns out in halacha that as long as you have the challah cover on the top, and let's say you either have the challah directly on the tablecloth on the bottom, or even if you have it on a challah board, that can count as the second covering, and therefore that will work for you as well. Which means you don't have to wrap the challah completely in the challah cover. As long as there's one on the top and you have something underneath it, that will count as covering on the top and on the bottom. How should a person cut the bread? A person should have both challahs in front of him, one on top of the other. He should hold on to both of them at the time that he's making the bracha. And in reality, a person should always cut the challah that's on top. Why? Because that's the one that's in front of you. Chutz milei Shabbos, except for Friday night. Shaz beitzim atachlin. At that point, you should cut the one that's on the bottom. Now, why is that? The reason is because when the man fell min hashamayim, when the man was falling from heaven, so the one on the bottom landed first. So therefore, Friday night, the first one you're going to eat is the one that landed first, which is the bottom loaf. Now, what are we going to do? Because normally you're supposed to cut the one that's on top. V'noigim lirshaim, he's going to explain. V'noigim lirshaim ala challah b'sakin. The minhag is to make a little bit of a mark on the challah itself where you're going to cut. Aval lo yachtech. Don't even cut it though. In the place where you're going to eventually cut, you just make a little mark. It's supposed to make it a bit easier to be able to cut, and you can save time in the HaMotzei. Yesh manichin b'leil Shabbos hakikar atachton karav ma'adei lav yosem in elyon. Now, this problem that we have, that normally you always cut the challah that's on top over the bottom challah, but on Friday night you have to cut the bottom challah first because that's the one that fell from heaven first. What do? We don't want to pass over the mitzvah of cutting the top challah, which is what we normally would do. So therefore, you should keep the bottom challah protruding a little bit towards you, so that it's sticking closer towards you than the top one, and that way, that's what you meet first, so to speak, after the HaMotzei, and then you're allowed to cut the bottom one before you cut the top one. That would be the appropriate way to make HaMotzei in this case. Shir Seudas Shabbos, how much do you need to eat to be yotzei, to fulfill your obligation of the Suda, of the meal? It is lechanchila, which means the best way to fulfill your obligation of 3 bread meals. You need to eat a little bit more than a kabetza, than an egg's volume of bread. That would mean approximately one piece of challah, or a good half of a solid, thicker piece of challah. That's enough bread for you to eat. It will be the Dovid, gam yotzei suda Shabbos im kazayis pas. B'diavad, meaning after the fact, the second best way to do it is even if you had a kazayis, you had only an olive's worth of bread, that would be enough. So that would be even smaller than what we just said. The way in which you behave at the Shabbos table, your whole hanhaga, all of your actions and the like, they should be fitting for the holiness and sanctity of Shabbos. It's a wonderful thing if you spend time at the Shabbos table speaking about the weekly parsha and other holy inyanim of kedusha and of Torah. Even though there's a mitzvah to extend the meal, meaning enjoy. You're not in a rush on Shabbos, the Yom Menucha. You're not running out to work. You're not running out to go jog. You're not running out to go onto the computer. You have all the time in the world to sit and enjoy the Suda. Nevertheless, Yizahir, you should still be careful that if you extend the meal, so you got the parsha out of the way after the fish, and you spoke a little bit about halacha by the time you finish the chicken soup, and you're now in the middle of the meal, and you catch up on each other's weeks, and it's good. You're saying good stuff. But now the meal just keeps schlepping out and stretching out longer and longer and longer. You're starting to run out of things to talk about. The next thing you know, there's one word of Lashon over here. There's another word of Lashon over there. Maybe you're talking about things that we don't speak about by the Shabbos table. There's a Kedusha of the Shabbos table. It's not a place to speak about the movies and the news and the politics and Trump and the like. Shabbos, Kodesh. So therefore, he writes, even though that you could extend the meal and take your time and make it enjoyable, just be careful that if it's getting too long and you're running out of holy conversations to speak about, it would behoove you to say Birchas HaMazon at that time and then finish the meal and go on your way. Okay, we'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. All the best.